let's install software on a Macintosh computer. Setup can be the trickiest part of this class. Don't give up hope. We'll help you through it. For the outline, first you need to understand your computer setup. Then you need to pick the right version of the software. Then you need to install Java, if it's necessary. The truth is that Apple handles this behind the scenes very nicely, so it's rarely necessary. The next thing you need to do is install Eclipse, then install the documentation if that is necessary, and lastly check the installation to make sure that all the bells and whistles are working for the class. Now this demo was done with a Mac running OS X 10.8, which is called Mountain Lion. If you're running a different version of the operating system, it may look a little different, but the essential steps are the same. Unfortunately, Apple, Google, and Mozilla are making changes to their browsers constantly. This means that daily updates can and sometimes do break things. The challenge here is you need to do daily updates in order to keep your system secure. So don't be discouraged by that. Just get online at Janux and we'll help you fix things when they break. Now, computer hardware actually matters a little bit when you're getting things set up. Some older computers are 32-bit. Almost all newer computers are 64-bit. To check whether your computer is 32 or 64-bit, we'll go to the Apple menu, then About This Mac and More Info. Let's do that now. Here's the Apple menu, About This Mac, More Info. This tells me that my processor is a 2.6 GHz Intel Core i7. Now on this page right here, it has a listing of processor architectures. The thing is, there are only two that are 32-bit. One is an Intel Core Solo and another is an Intel Core Duo. Since I didn't have any of those processors, you know that I have a 64-bit system. It's very likely that you have a 64-bit system too, unless your computer is quite old. The next thing you need to do is to check whether your browser is 32 or 64-bit. So to do this, you go to Apple, About This Mac, More Info, the same thing we did before, but then you go to System Report, Applications, and Safari. If it says 64-bit with Intel in parentheses and yes, that means it's running in 64-bit. Otherwise, it's running in 32. So let's go do that now. Here's the Apple menu, About This Mac, More Info, System Report. Applications is way down here. It's actually off the screen on my system. And then you have to scroll through all of the applications. So let's look for Firefox. Here's Firefox. And notice at the bottom, right down here, it says 64-bit Intel, yes. So my Firefox is running in 64-bit. If we wanted to look at Safari, for example, we would just scroll down until we find Safari. Right there is Safari. Select it, and we can see it's also running in 64-bit. So, Safari can be in either 32-bit or 64-bit, and Firefox can be in either 32-bit or 64-bit. If you have a 64-bit system, there's no reason not to run these in 64-bit. Chrome, on the other hand, is still only in 32-bit, and so that will tend to cause trouble with Java. Now, you can run 32-bit software on 64-bit computers, but you can't run 64-bit software on 32-bit computers. Basically, the software tools for this class need to match. So everything needs to be in 32-bit or everything needs to be in 64-bit. So you have to strategically choose your configurations. The first thing you might want to try is to make sure that Java is installed on your computers. This is done by default on Macintoshes, so unless somebody's meddled with the setup of your computer, it's very likely that you still have Java. Here's a test page that you can use. So you verify your Java version. Right now it's detecting Java on the computer. I'm going to allow it to run. And it says, congratulations, you have the recommended Java installed. If it shows some version of Java installed, even if it's not the most recent one, you're good to go. Most of the things we're doing in this class are very elementary, so the latest version of Java is not necessary. If you have a 32-bit computer, everything needs to be in 32-bit. So you'll need to install Eclipse in 32-bit, and your browser will already be in 32-bit. So that should be straightforward. If you have a 64-bit computer, you should install Eclipse in 64-bit and use Safari or Firefox in 64-bit mode. Eclipse is our integrated development environment. What that means is it's the place where we're going to be programming in Java. So we're going to need to install Eclipse. We'll go to eclipse.org and choose Download Eclipse. So Download Eclipse is here, over on the side, the yellow button. I prefer to use the Eclipse standard version. So this would be right here, Mac OS X 64-bit. Now I downloaded it this morning before we started, so that I wouldn't have to make you wait while I download it again. Once it's saved to downloads, you select from downloads to install it, you double-click to decompress it, and we'll put the purple icon on the dock by dragging. It is handy to have the Eclipse icon on the dock when you're programming a lot. And then we can drag the decompressed Eclipse folder to Applications. Let me show you what that looks like. Here's my downloads file. Right here is the file I downloaded, so I'm going to double-click. So what that's doing is decompressing the file in the Downloads folder. You can see it's highlighted here. It's Eclipse. So we're going to open that up. We're going to drag this purple icon, the one right there, onto the menu bar. The dock. So there that goes. And we're going to drag this whole Eclipse folder over to Applications. I, of course, had an older version of Eclipse there, which you won't have if you haven't been programming in Eclipse. The next thing we want to do is access the Java API. This has descriptions of resources that Java has for us to use. We won't use it a lot at the beginning of the semester, but as the semester goes on, we'll use it more and more. If you have good internet access, there's no reason for you to download this, although you can download it if your internet access is spotty. So let's take a look at what it should look like. So right here is the API. All of these things over here, all of these classes and all of these packages are tools that Java has for us to use. Now we're not going to use all those this semester, so don't get worried, but it is helpful to have all the standard ones available. So if you can access this easily, you don't need to download it. The next thing we need to do is check our installation and make sure it's good. So we're going to start Eclipse from the dock, create a workspace in a good location. We'll talk about what that is when we're doing it. Get rid of the welcome screen and create a project. So here's Eclipse. Of course, it's warning me that I want to open it. We know we downloaded it from the internet, so we know it's okay. So, Eclipse has suggested Users, Deborah, Trytten, Documents Workspace is a good place for my workspace. That actually isn't where I like to keep my workspace. I like my workspace to be on the desktop. So, I'm going to browse and choose the desktop. And create this folder if it wasn't already there. Of course, it's already there because I have lots of Java projects hanging around. But to make a new folder, you would choose here, and make sure you choose a name that you understand, like Eclipse Workspace for 1323. Don't be afraid of making your file names long. It will actually make your life easier in the long run. You'll probably only have to choose a workspace once this semester, although you're welcome to change workspaces anytime you want. I like to keep everything together so I can go back and cut and paste. So, when you first log into Eclipse, what you're going to see is a welcome screen, and you need to get rid of that welcome screen, so you'll see something that looks like this. The first thing we'll do is create a new project. It's a Java project. So every program should get its own project name. It's okay to have spaces in the project names. Now, it highlights the one that it creates over here, and when you look in it, it will create a directory called source. Source is where our files go, and so that's where we want to place them. So we'll select that directory. So now that we've created our project, let's start a program. Now, the first thing you need to do is to create a class. We'll do that from the File menu, File, New Class, and I'm going to call it Computer Science is Grand. You'll notice that the words are smashed together, and every word starts with one capital letter. That's that camel case thing that we'll talk about. And that makes it easier to read. Spaces are not allowed in class names. Neither is punctuation. The other thing we want to do is check the box to get public static void main. Now this is our magical incantation that gets our programs to run. This is where we put the instructions in the program. So here we are in Eclipse. We'll do File, New, and then Class. So here's Computer Science is Grand, and I want a main program to be created. So that's right there. The next thing I'm going to do is beautify the code a little bit. I'm going to move some curly braces around, I'm going to edit some stuff, and remove a little bit of the things that Eclipse puts in by default that I don't happen to like. Now, it may look like I'm wasting your time here by beautifying code, but keeping your code neat and organized is actually quite important. It's what makes it possible to read the program successfully and easily. It's something I strongly recommend you learn to do too. So here are my usual beautifications. Eclipse puts the curly braces in a little different place than I like them. I like to have the curly braces so that they line up on the left. That way I can see if they're correct a little more easily. So I do that both for the class here and for the main program here. Now this particular comment is something that's not useful for us, and so we remove that too. And that gives us a little nicer place to start the code. Notice that nothing is underlined in red right now. That means that Eclipse is happy. Eclipse goes along with you and checks what you're doing as you work, and so if you don't see little red X's and bars hanging around, that's an indication that everything's going okay. Now, if you do see X's and bars, don't panic. It just takes some practice getting used to where all the punctuation goes. Now, the next thing we're going to do is add some output. So we're going to go to the web page for the Association of Computing Machinery and pick our favorite reason to major in computer science. The Association for Computing Machinery is the professional organization that's home for people like me who are professional computer scientists. It has some wonderful resources there. If you're interested in computer science as a career, I recommend that you join the ACM as a student member as soon as possible. The membership is very reasonable, and this is part of what it means to be a professional, so I recommend that you avail yourself of those opportunities. So let's go and look and see what they have to say about computing careers. The top 10 reasons to major in computing. Computing is part of everything we do. Boy, you can't argue with that one. Expertise in computing makes you solve complex and challenging problems. That's true too. Computing enables you to make a positive difference in the world. To me, that's the most important part of computing, so that's the one I'm going to pick. But you may want to go and read the rest of them. Now we want to add one line of code to the main program. So we'll do system out print line. Computing enables you to make a positive difference in the world. System out print line. Computing makes it possible to make a positive difference in the world. Now you probably noticed as I was typing that Eclipse was putting up all sorts of little red X's and red lines. That's typical of what Eclipse is going to do. Don't worry about that. Wait till the end of the lines to make corrections. If instead of typing this, you cut and paste it from the PowerPoint, that's fine. The thing is, PowerPoint uses a little bit different quotes, and so that's going to mess up the quotes. You're going to have to go and type them in again from the keyboard using the double quote key that's usually just a little bit to left of the return or enter key on your keyboard. So that will fix that problem if you happen to get it. To run your program, you can choose Run from the menu, and you should see your chosen slogan in the console window. And there we go. If that didn't work, there's probably just some small error in the program. Compare it very carefully to my program, one character at a time, and try to find the differences. Things to look for: capital letters instead of small letters, using commas instead of periods or other punctuation. These are the kind of things that cause trouble in programming. So let's see what would happen, for example, if we put a small s on system instead of a capital S. Notice right now that Eclipse is unhappy. You can tell it's unhappy because of the little red X. And it says system cannot be resolved. Now, that's not a very helpful message, even though it is pointing to the correct place in code where we made the mistake. What that means is I can't find the word system. So the fact that the word system is in it is actually a hint that that's what's wrong. But the communication isn't very good, and it takes some practice and experience to get used to the way Eclipse talks about code. Notice when I change it back to system, it disappears. If you don't tend to be a very precise person, you're going to need to get used to working at a much greater degree of precision to be successful in programming. Don't worry, you can get used to it. Now, if that doesn't work, you can always get help on the Janux social media if you need it. There are lots of people who will be able to help you there, including me. The next thing we're going to do is check JavaBat. This is at http://codingbat.com. You're going to need to create an account, particularly if you're in the 4-credit class, and share your results with me at dtrytten@ou.edu. Please don't do this if you're in the open class. There's no way for me to go back and look at work you've previously done, so instead post on Janux. Let's go and take a look at what this should look like if everything is correctly installed. Here's CodingBat, and here's a method called SumDouble. If you got this far, it means that your coding is successful. But let's actually work an example and see how it works. Let's enter this code between the curly braces. If A equals B in parentheses, return 4 asterisk A semicolon. Then on the next line, return A plus B semicolon. Now don't worry about what any of this means. Right now it has no meaning, but we'll know what it means in about 2 weeks. And then you hit go. So here's CodingBat. If A equals B in parentheses, we return 4 times A, otherwise return A plus B. And we hit the go button. Because we have this green check here and all of these green things here, that means we implemented it successfully. The next thing to check are Problets. So we're going to go to http://problets.org. If you pick topics, and let's do this first one from Java. We are willing to accept the risk and run this application. If you see this page, it means your Java is correctly installed, and you'll be able to do Problets successfully too. Now, if the Problets don't work, it's probably a security problem. So try another browser. Remember, the browser has to be from the same category. So for example, if you're on a 64-bit system, don't try Chrome, because Chrome is 32-bit and you installed a 64-bit Java. Students who are taking this class for credit will need to create an account and sign in from the link for this semester's class that's given on the course management system. Please do use your full legal name and student number and not just your email. I really don't know who sillystudent@hotmail.org is. During the semester, we may have some problems with security issues. Browsers periodically disable Java during security attacks. Then you'll have to enable Java to run Problets again. Turing's will work because Java's run on their servers, and Eclipse is going to work because it's running on your computer. CodingBat will also work because it's running on their systems. But these problems do come up during the semester, and we'll post on Janux when they do. Enjoy programming!